I still remember the night he stopped saying goodnight. It sounds small, doesn't it? But that's how endings usually begin. Not with slammed doors or loud confessions, but with silence. For 22 years, our life had been made up of small rituals. A kiss before he left for work, the way he'd call me sunshine when I brought him coffee, the little notes he used to leave on the fridge, buy milk, followed by a sloppy heart drawn in blue ink. I used to think love was supposed to be comfortable, predictable, like a favorite sweater that's worn thin but still warm. Maybe that's why I didn't see it coming, the way his eyes started drifting toward his phone more than toward me. My name is Clara, and this isn't just the story of how my marriage fell apart. It's the story of how I found out who I really was after losing everything I thought defined me. In the beginning, our house always smelt like roasted coffee and fresh laundry. He, Ethan, would whistle in the mornings, off-key but cheerful. We had 2 grown kids, both away at university, and the house had finally become quiet again. I thought that quiet meant peace. It actually meant distance. He'd started working later, blaming projects and deadlines. I believed him, or maybe I wanted to. I'd wait up for him, half asleep on the couch, pretending to watch TV while listening for the sound of his car. Sometimes he'd come home smelling like mint gum and cologne that wasn't his usual brand. Little things. Always little things. He'd say, "You're imagining things, Clara." And I'd laugh, because maybe I was. Because after all these years, you don't expect the person you built a life with to suddenly become a stranger. We met in college. He was the loud one, charming, reckless, the type who'd take the long way home just to keep a conversation going. I was the quieter type, more grounded. He used to tell people, "She's the calm to my storm." He made me feel like the world was something to chase. And for a while, it was beautiful. That kind of love that feels like a movie you don't want to end. We built a small life together. 2 kids, a mortgage, late night takeout, and laughter that filled every room. But love, I learned, isn't destroyed in one blow. It erodes. A little, every day, like waves against rock. There was one evening I can't forget. It was early autumn, and the light through the kitchen window turned everything gold. I was making dinner, his favorite, creamy chicken pasta, when I heard his phone buzz on the counter. It was just one message. One name. Sophie. I didn't read it. Not then. But something about the way he snatched it up, too fast, too careful, carved a pit in my stomach. That night, he didn't say goodnight. He just rolled over and faced the wall. I stared at his back for a long time, memorizing the outline of the man I used to know, wondering when he'd stopped feeling like home. For weeks, I tried to make things better. I wore the perfume he once said he loved. I cooked the meals he used to request. I even suggested we go on a weekend trip, just the 2 of us. He said he was too busy. That's when I started talking to myself, out loud sometimes, just to fill the silence. I'd say, maybe it's stress, I'd tell the mirror. Maybe this is just what happens after 20 years. But deep down, I knew better. Love doesn't vanish, it shifts. It finds somewhere else to live. The night I finally looked through his phone, it wasn't out of curiosity, it was out of self-preservation. He'd left it unlocked on the kitchen table while he showered. I stared at it for what felt like hours. Then with shaking hands, I opened his messages. There she was, Sophie. Her messages were soft, playful. She called him E. She sent him pictures, the kind that made my breath stop. The last one said, "Can't wait to see you again, love. She'll never make you feel the way I do." I don't remember dropping the phone, but I do remember the sound it made when it hit the tile. A clean, sharp crack. Like glass breaking. And maybe that's exactly what it was. The sound of something breaking that would never be whole again. When he came out of the shower, I was sitting there, still, quiet, staring at nothing. He froze when he saw the phone. Clara, I can explain. I held up my hand. No. Don't for a long time. Neither of us spoke. The only sound was the dripping of water from his hair onto the floor. Finally, he said it. The lie that would replay in my mind for months afterwards. I didn't mean for this to happen. I laughed. A small, broken laugh. People don't just trip and fall into betrayal, Ethan. He looked at me like a stranger. And maybe I was, to him, at least. I wish I could say I screamed or threw something or kicked him out that night. But I didn't. I just stood there, numb, feeling every ounce of the 22 years between us. Every birthday, every argument, every apology, every promise. And all I could think was, this is how it ends. Not with fire, not with fury, but with exhaustion. In the weeks that followed, he tried to make it right. He said, I just got lost, he said once. I still love you, Clara. I just needed something new. Something new. As if I were an old coat he'd grown tired of wearing. I didn't cry that time, I just nodded. Because the truth was, I was tired too. Tired of holding on to something that was already gone. Still, I didn't leave. Maybe it was habit or hope or the quiet fear of starting over at 45. I told myself I'd wait, see if things changed. But instead, I watched him fade a little more every day, like a photograph left too long in the sun. Until one night, he came home late again. The smell of a woman's perfume clung to his shirt, and I didn't ask whose. That was the night I stopped waiting. It's strange. The moment you realize you've lost someone, you also realize you found yourself standing on the edge of something new, something terrifying, yes, but also something free. I didn't know it then, but that night marked the beginning of everything that would fall off. The heartbreak, the silence, the twist I never saw coming. Because sometimes the people who betray you the deepest end up needing you the most. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel invisible, share this story and tell me, would you have stayed that night or walked away?
It's strange how quickly silence becomes routine. A few weeks after I discovered the messages, Ethan and I moved through the house like ghosts, hunting the same walls. We said all the right things in front of others. We're fine, just busy. You know how marriage is. But at night, we barely spoke. His phone became an extension of his hand. My heart became a wound I didn't want to look at. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me across the table. Not with love, not even with guilt, but with something else. Pity, maybe. The kind you give someone you've already decided to leave. One night, I asked him quietly, "Do you still love her?" He hesitated just long enough to answer the question without words. "I don't know," he said. "It's, complicated." Complicated. That word hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Bitter and impossible to ignore. He didn't pack his things that night, but emotionally, he was already gone. During the day, I kept myself busy. Cleaning, gardening, pretending to work from home. Pretending not to notice the way he smiled at his phone or stepped outside to take work calls. But at night, the pretending collapsed. I'd lie awake listening to the rhythm of his breathing beside me. Steady, distant, as if he were dreaming of another life. Sometimes I wanted to shake him awake and scream, "Look at me, I'm still here." But what good would it do? You can't fight a ghost for someone's attention. I started going for long walks in the evenings. It was easier to face the cold wind than the silence inside our house. There was a small park 3 blocks away.
Old oak trees, cracked benches, and a duck pond that caught the city lights just right. That's where I met Grace. She was sitting on the same bench every evening, feeding the ducks with a paper bag of crumbs. We started talking, first about the weather, then about life. She was older, maybe late 60s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that saw right through me. One night she said, "You look like a woman trying not to fall apart." I didn't deny it. She smiled sadly. "Don't waste your tears on someone who already decided to leave. Let him go and watch what comes back to you." I didn't understand what she meant then, but I would. A week later, Ethan came home late again. The house smelled of rain and something metallic. Maybe perfume, maybe guilt. He dropped his keys on the counter. "We need to talk." My stomach tightened. "Then talk." There are moments in life when you realize you've crossed an invisible line, a point where there's no going back. For me, that line was drawn in ink. Black, slanted handwriting on a single folded note. "You promised me she'd never find out. You know what happens if she does." Those words replayed in my mind for days, each one pressing harder against my chest until it hurt to breathe. At first, I told myself it was just something work-related, maybe a client, maybe someone joking. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. Ethan was careless, yes, selfish even, but never paranoid. This note wasn't flirtation, it was warning. I kept it hidden in a drawer beside my bed, under an old stack of receipts and half-burned candles. Every night before I slept, I'd read it again. Not because I wanted to torture myself, but because it felt like a puzzle only I could solve. And the more I looked at it, the more I noticed. The handwriting wasn't a woman's. It was too rigid, too precise. Whoever wrote it wasn't someone seducing him. They were threatening him. Ethan stopped by the house again a week later. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble along his jaw. "You look awful," I said before I could stop myself. He laughed hollowly. "Thanks. Good to see you too." There was something jittery about him, like a man watching for shadows that only he could see. I offered him coffee. He shook his head. "I won't stay long. I needed to talk." His hands were trembling slightly. "Have you noticed anything strange lately? Anyone asking questions?" "About what?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just if anyone contacts you asking about me, don't say anything. It's complicated." There it was again, that word, complicated. And this time it wasn't about love. I took a breath. "Ethan, what did you get yourself into?" He didn't answer. He just stared at me, long enough for me to see the fear behind his eyes. Then he whispered, "I think I made a mistake." Before I could say anything, he turned and left. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not because I missed him, but because for the first time in months, I was afraid for him. Or maybe morning light has a cruel way of making everything look honest. You can't hide from the day. It exposes what the night lets you deny. That morning, the envelope burned in my hands. The photo of Ethan, the reflection of Grace. It didn't make sense, but it felt true. I kept staring at her face in the window's glass, calm, almost kind, like she'd been there all along, watching the story unfold from the shadows. I pressed the photo flat against the table, tracing the edge with my thumb. How could Grace, the woman who told me to let him go, be part of this? I dialed Ethan's number. No answer. Then I called again and again. On the fourth ring, someone picked up, but it wasn't him. A man's voice. Flat, unhurried. Mrs. Miller? The use of my married name made my stomach twist. Who is this? Ethan won't be reachable for a while. It's better if you stop looking for him. I gripped the phone tighter. If you've hurt him, no one's hurt him yet, but curiosity can be dangerous, Clara. Click. Silence. I sat there with the dial tone humming like a heartbeat in my ear until it went dead. By midday, I was driving. No plan, just motion. The rain had turned the streets to mirrors, every red light reflecting back the version of myself I didn't recognize. Eyes wide, jaw clenched, a woman running towards something she didn't understand. The only place that made sense was the park. Grace's bench waited like a question mark carved into the landscape. I parked, shoved the envelope into my coat pocket, and walked straight to the bench. Empty again, but there was a smell in the air. Her perfume, faintly floral, like jasmine and smoke. Grace, I called out softly, if you're here, please, I just want to understand. No answer. Only the whisper of leaves and the steady hiss of the city beyond the trees. Then from behind me, a voice. You shouldn't have come alone. I spun around. Grace was standing by the path, umbrella in hand, her silver hair tucked neatly behind her ears. She looked the same and completely different. Where is he? I demanded. She sighed. He has a talent for breaking promises. I warned him about that. Warned him? I took a step closer. You wrote the letters? Her lips curved into something between a smile and pity. I told him not to let you find out. Find out what? That the money he was hiding wasn't his. She gestured to the bench. Said Clara, if you're going to hate me, at least do it after you know why. I sat, because my legs were shaking. Grace looked out over the pond as she spoke, voice calm and deliberate. Ethan got involved with a company 2 years ago, a shell corporation. It promised high returns, too high. He thought he was investing in tech, but it was laundering money for people who don't forgive mistakes. He tried to pull out. That's when Sophie showed up. My mouth went dry. She wasn't just an affair. No, she was his handler. The word hung in the air like smoke. Grace turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw the exhaustion in her eyes. He told me everything last year. I worked for that company once before I realized what it really was. I tried to help him get out, but Ethan, he wanted to protect you. That's why he came back. He said they'd come for me. They will, unless you do exactly what I say. I stared at her. Why would you help me? She smiled faintly. Because once someone helped me, and because you remind me of the woman I used to be before I lost everything trying to love a man who couldn't stop lying. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The world around us carried on, cars in the distance, children laughing somewhere beyond the trees, but it all felt unreal, as though time had narrowed to this small circle of truth between us. What do you want me to do? I finally asked. She said, pretend you never saw the letter. If anyone contacts you, say nothing. Leave the house tonight, go somewhere crowded, and wait for my call. I shook my head. You're asking me to trust you after you've been lying to me for weeks. Grace's gaze didn't waver. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. She stood up, slipping the umbrella shut. They'll make it look like Ethan ran. He didn't. He's trying to fix it before they fix him. I wanted to ask more, to scream, to demand every answer, but when I blinked, she was already walking away. Her silhouette disappeared into the mist like she'd never been there at all. I sat there, heart pounding, mind spinning. Laundering, handlers, lies wrapped in fear.
But one thing stood out above all. Grace said they'd make it look like Ethan ran, which meant they were planning something soon. That night, I packed a small bag. Not much: wallet, phone, the letter, the photograph. The house felt like a stranger's place now, full of ghosts and echoes. I was halfway out the door when my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Don't go. It's not her you should fear. I froze. My reflection in the window looked pale and warped. I typed that before I could think. Who is this? The 3 dots blinked for a moment, then disappeared. No reply. I waited. 1 minute. 2. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps in the porch. I turned slowly. Through the glass, a figure stood just beyond the porch light. Not Grace, not Ethan. A woman, younger, her hair slick from rain. She knocked once, gently. Clara, we need to talk. I didn't open the door. You should leave. Her voice was calm, almost kind. You're in danger. Ethan lied to you, to both of us. I laughed, sharp and bitter. And I'm supposed to believe you? You don't have to, but you might want to hear what he did with your name. That stopped me. My name? She nodded. He opened accounts in it. He thought it would keep him safe, but now everything leads back to you. I opened the door just a crack. Rain swept in, cool and sharp. She looked nothing like the photos I'd seen. Tired, scared, real. She never meant to hurt you. He told me you left him. I didn't even know until it was too late. Too late for what? For him. Her eyes flicked past me, scanning the dark behind my shoulder. They're coming tonight, Clara, for the files. For you. She slipped something into my hand. A USB drive. Small and cold. This has everything. If I don't make it out, give it to Grace. She'll know what to do. Before I could ask anything, headlights flashed across the window. A black car stopped at the curb. Her eyes widened. They found me. Then she ran. I stood frozen as she disappeared into the rain. The car door slammed, and tires screeched down the street. Then, when silence returned, the drive was still in my hand. My name, engraved on the metal in tiny letters.
I stood in the doorway long after the sound of tires faded, the USB drive heavy in my palm. Rainwater pooled on the floor where Sophie had stood, a perfect outline of her shoes, proof she'd been real and not just another ghost in this storm of lies. The house felt smaller, the walls closer. Every clock tick echoed like a warning. He used my name. I moved to the kitchen table, laptop open, hands shaking as I slid the drive into the port. A single folder appeared. C. Miller Holdings. Inside, dozens of scanned forms, bank statements, offshore accounts, signatures that looked like mine but weren't. Each file a quiet betrayal. Each zero on those balances a weight pressing against my chest. Ethan hadn't only broken my heart, he'd built his escape on my identity. A knock at the back door made me jump. When I looked, Grace stood outside, raincoat glistening. "Let me in," she said quietly. I stepped aside, half angry, half relieved. You knew what he'd done." She closed her umbrella with a snap. "Not everything. Not until Sophie ran. They're cleaning up, Clara. Anyone who can link those accounts, gone." My throat tightened. "So what do I do? Run?" "Not yet." She looked at the laptop. "Copy the files. Send them to someone who can make them public. If they go viral, the people behind this can't hide. That's the only protection you'll have." Her calmness terrified me more than her words. As I copied the folder onto another drive, Grace paced the kitchen, eyes flicking to the window. "When I left them years ago, I thought I could disappear, but they have a way of finding loose ends.
I glanced at her. And Ethan was your loose end? She stopped pacing. He was my son. The words landed like a blow. My knees almost gave out. Your what? He didn't know. I gave him up when he was a baby. I tracked him down after I realized what he'd gotten into. I thought I could save him the way no one saved me. I stared at her face, the same sharp eyes, the same determined mouth. How had I never noticed? All the evenings in the park, all the advice, it hadn't been chance. She'd been watching him through me. The realization burned. You used me. Grace shook her head. No, I tried to protect you. But when he told me he'd moved money under your name, I knew they'd come for you next. I wanted to scream, to hate her, but something in her voice stopped me. It wasn't calculation, it was regret. Where is he now? I asked. She looked down. I don't know. The last call I got was from an unknown number. He said, "Tell her not to trust the one who comes next." Then the line went dead. Before I could ask what she meant, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I'm outside. We froze. Grace's hand went to her coat pocket. There was a small pistol there, matte black, steady in her grip. Get behind me, she whispered. I peered through the curtain. Headlights. A single car idling by the curb. Then a familiar silhouette stepped out. Ethan. He looked worse than before, soaked, eyes wild, clutching something close to his chest. I ran to the door before Grace could stop me. Clara, don't! Too late. Ethan stumbled inside, slamming the door behind him. Lock it, he gasped. Grace leveled the gun at him. What did you do? He looked from her to me, confusion flickering. You told her? She deserved the truth, Grace said. He laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Truth? You don't even know half of it. I stepped forward. Then tell me, because right now all I know is that you destroyed my life. He shook his head. No, Clara, I was trying to save it. They wanted a name that wouldn't raise suspicion, someone clean, someone ordinary. I thought I could use yours, move the money, and then fix it before they noticed. But Sophie found out. She said you used both of us. I snapped. She's lying. His voice cracked. She works for them. Grace does too. Grace's eyes narrowed. Don't. He turned on her. Tell her the truth, how you were the one who introduced me to them in the first place. The room felt suddenly smaller, air thick with accusation. Grace's gun wavered. I did what I had to do to survive. And you dragged me into it, Ethan shouted. You wanted redemption, so you handed me over like a bargaining chip. The gun lowered a fraction. He looked at me, desperate. Clara, please, you have to believe me. Everything's on that drive. Everything she did. My pulse thundered. 2 stories, 2 truths, both impossible. Enough, I whispered. I can't tell who's lying. Grace's voice softened. Then look at the drive. See whose signature really moves the money. Ethan's face paled. Don't. My hands shook as I pulled the USB from the laptop and slid it back in. Files open, lines of data spilling across the screen. Transactions, authorizations, digital signatures. One caught my eye. Primary authorization, E. Miller. Secondary verification, G. Hart. Grace Hart. I turned slowly. It's you. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat. I tried to erase my name. I couldn't. Ethan stepped forward, voice raw. She framed me. I was the decoy. Grace raised the gun again. I couldn't let them find me. You don't know what they do to people who walk away. Then why involve me? I demanded. Because you were clean. Because I thought they'd never look at you twice. Outside, engines rumbled. 2, maybe 3. Headlights sliced through the curtains. They're here, Ethan whispered. Grace backed toward the back door. I can draw them off. You two go out the front. I grabbed her arm. You'll be killed. She smiled faintly. Maybe.
but you'll live. That's more than I deserve." Before I could stop her, she pushed the USB into my pocket. "Run." Then she was gone, out into the rain, into the light. Gunshots cracked the night. Ethan pulled me toward the hallway. "This way." We burst through the front door, sprinting into the dark. Rain hit my face like needles. Behind us, headlights flashed, voices shouted. We didn't stop until we reached the park, the same bench, the same pond, now black under storm clouds. Ethan bent over, gasping. "She won't make it." I stared at him. "And you think you will?" He looked up at me then, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the boy he used to be, terrified, cornered, human. He said softly, "Clara, if I don't get out, they'll come for you next. The drive, don't trust anyone with it, not even the police." Lightning split the sky. When the thunder followed, he was gone, vanished into the trees. I stood alone by the bench, soaked to the bone, heart pounding, the drive pressing cold against my thigh. Somewhere behind me, sirens began to wail. I didn't know if they were coming for him or for me. But I knew one thing. Every person I thought I knew, Ethan, Grace, even Sophie, was part of a story that started long before I found that first letter. And it wasn't finished yet.
Rain has a way of washing everything clean, except guilt. By dawn, the storm had thinned to mist. The park looked softer, almost innocent again, as if the gunshots had been part of some fever dream. But the smell of metal still lingered in the air. I sat on the bench where Grace used to feed the ducks, the USB drive clutched so tightly in my hand that its edges left tiny crescents in my palm. My clothes were soaked, my mind blank. Ethan was gone. Grace might be dead, and somewhere between them lay a truth that could ruin me. When the first police car rolled by the edge of the park, I ducked behind the bench. Instinct, not reason. The sirens were distant now, moving toward the suburbs. I waited until the quiet returned before heading home. Every step felt heavier. The streets were empty, shops' nines flickering awake one by one. A woman watering her flower boxes glanced at me, then looked away quickly, as though she'd sensed the weight I carried. By the time I reached my street, the morning news was already whispering from open windows, something about an incident near the river, no names released. I didn't have to guess whose. Inside, the house smelled of damp wood and burnt coffee. A bullet hole splintered one corner of the kitchen window. My teacup from last night lay shattered on the floor. I knelt to pick up the pieces and caught my reflection in the glass shard. Pale face, red-rimmed eyes, hair plastered to my cheeks. I looked like a stranger wearing my grief. I set the shards in the sink, washed my hands, and did the only thing I could think to do. Made coffee. The mundane felt like oxygen. Steam rose, curling around the edges of the day, and for a moment I let myself pretend everything was normal, that Ethan was just late for breakfast, that Grace would call to gossip about the neighbors. But then the drive on the counter cut the light, and reality came crashing back. I opened my laptop again. The folder blinked like a pulse. C.M. Miller Holdings. I scrolled through the documents slowly this time, line by line, refusing to let the fear blur the details. It wasn't just money transfers. There were memos, project outlines, files labeled acquisitions. Most of the names meant nothing to me until I found one. Hart Industries. Grace's old company. She hadn't only been hiding from them, she'd been part of building them. And at the bottom of the last file, something even worse. Power of attorney. Clara Miller. My digital signature attached.
which meant legally. Every crime tied to those accounts led straight back to me. I shut the laptop, heart racing. I wanted to call someone, but who? The police would see my name and arrest me. My children couldn't know, not until I understood what this really was. So I called the only person left, Michael. When his sleepy voice answered, I almost hung up. "Clara? It's 6 a.m. Are you okay?" "No," I said simply. "I need your help." He didn't ask questions, just said, "Come to my office, back entrance, half an hour." Michael's office was in an old building downtown, a law firm that smelled of paper and dust. He ushered me inside, locked the door, and handed me a towel. "You look like you've been through a war," he said softly. "Something like that." I placed the USB on his desk. "I need you to look at these files. Tell me what they mean." He plugged it in, brows furrowing as he scrolled. His face changed as he read, first confusion, then disbelief, then something colder. "Clara, where did you get this?" "Ethan left it, or Grace did. I don't know anymore." He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "These accounts, if they're real, you're listed as the primary beneficiary on at least 3 offshore trusts worth millions, but they're tied to companies flagged for investigation last year. So I'm involved in money laundering? On paper, yes. In reality, maybe not." He looked at me. "If this goes public, they'll come for you before they come for him." My stomach turned. There has to be a way to clear my name. He rubbed his temples. "If we can prove your signature was forged, maybe, but these files look authentic. Whoever did this knew exactly how to make it legal." The room felt smaller, the air thick. I whispered, "He said he used my name to keep me safe." Michael's voice softened. "He thought hiding behind you would protect him. People always think the ones they love will forgive them." I looked up sharply. "You sound like you know that from experience." He smiled sadly. "Everyone has someone they've disappointed, Clara." He printed a few documents, slid them across the desk. "Keep these copies somewhere safe. If anything happens, this proves you came to me first." "Anything happens?" He hesitated. "The people behind this, they don't just lose money, they erase problems. If Grace is gone and Ethan is running, you might be the last loose end." The words settled heavy in the room. "Then what do I do?" I asked. He looked at the window, the first pale light spilling over the skyline. "Disappear for a while. Don't tell anyone where you're going. I'll try to trace where these accounts lead." I nodded, numb. As I left the office, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A text. "He's not who you think he is. Don't trust Michael." My chest tightened. Another lie? Another trap? I looked back through the glass door. Michael sat at his desk, the glow of the screen lighting his face, unreadable. Was he the warning Ethan had meant? The one who would come next?
The city felt sharper that morning, every sound a little too clear. The hiss of buses, the slam of shop shutters, the murmur of people who had the luxury of ordinary lives. I kept walking, clutching the folder Michael had printed, my fingers leaving damp marks on the paper. Who do you trust when everyone you love lies to you? I ducked into a cafe on the corner, the kind with chipped mugs and a radio that never quite reached the right station. I sat by the window, trying to look like any other tired woman starting her day. My reflection looked back, still me, but thinner, ghosted. The phone on the table blinked again. Another message from the unknown number. He knows where Ethan is. He'll trade you for him. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then, as if on cue, Michael called. "Clara, don't panic," he said, voice steady. "I think I found something." "Where are you?"
At my office. Come back. You need to see this. I almost laughed because that was exactly what a trap sounded like. Still, curiosity is a kind of gravity. It pulls you even when you know the fall will hurt. I left the cafe, walking fast but not running. Rain started again, light and cold, pinning my hair to my forehead. Michael's building loomed ahead, the front door propped open. That wasn't like him. I hesitated, then stepped inside. The lobby lights flickered. The elevator was still on the 5th floor. His office door was ajar. Michael? No answer. Only the soft hum of the computers. Then I saw it. The coffee mug tipped on its side, a dark stain spreading across papers on his desk, and beside it, the USB drive I'd given him, neatly placed as if returned. My pulse jumped. I moved closer. The screen of his laptop glowed with an unfinished email draft addressed to Grace Hurt. She took the bait. Expect her soon. We'll have everything by tonight. My stomach dropped. So the text had been right. I turned toward the door, heart racing, but a shadow moved in the glass wall. Going somewhere? Michael's voice came from behind me. Calm. Too calm. He stepped into the room, closing the door with a soft click. His tie was loose, his expression unreadable. I can't explain, he said. Don't bother. He sighed. It's not what you think. That line's getting old, I snapped. You're working with them, with Grace. I was, until she decided you were more valuable alive. What does that mean? She wants what's on the drive, Clara. Not the money, the names, the real investors. You're the only person who can move the files without setting off alarms. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black phone. Help me send it, and I can get us both out. I stepped back. Us? He smiled faintly. I'm not her ally anymore. She used me too. Ethan was supposed to hand over the accounts. He ran. Now they think you have the key. Maybe I do. He looked at me carefully. Then we can both disappear. Something in his eyes flickered. Hope or desperation, I couldn't tell. I glanced at the desk. His gun lay half hidden under a folder. He followed my gaze. You don't have to be afraid of me, he said softly. That's the problem. I'm afraid of what happens if I believe you. The sound of a phone buzzing cut through the air. His, on the desk. A message flashed on the screen. Unknown number. She's behind you. Before I could react, the office door burst open. Grace. She looked older than the last time I saw her. Coat torn, a bruise darkening her cheek. The gun in her hand didn't waver. Step away from her, she said to Michael. He raised his hands. You don't want to do this. I warned you what would happen if you touched her. I stared between them. You said you were helping me. Both of you said that. So which one of you is lying? Grace's eyes flicked to me. Both of us once. But not now. Then quieter. Ethan's dead, Clara. The world tilted. No. They found him near the river, she continued, voice trembling for the first time. They made it look like a robbery. Michael took a step forward. She's trying to turn you against me. Grace's gun snapped up. He sent the coordinates. He let them to Ethan. That's a lie, Michael said. I was trying to bring him in. I could barely breathe. The two people who claimed to protect me were pointing guns, one literal, one emotional, straight at each other. I did the only thing left to do. I grabbed the drive from the desk and ran. I heard shouts, a crash, the sound of a gun firing as I burst through the stairwell. My shoes slipped on the wet concrete and kept running. Somewhere below, another door slammed. By the time I reached the street, my lungs burned. I turned a corner, pressing myself against a brick wall, the USB still clutched in my coat. The city blurred around me, sirens, horns, the metallic taste of fear in my mouth. If Ethan was dead, then the only truth left was locked inside this tiny piece of metal, and I wasn't going to give it to anyone. Not Grace, not Michael, not the ghost of the people I used to trust.
I slipped the drive into the lining of my coat and melted into the morning crowd. Each face around me was a mask of indifference, a reminder that the world doesn't stop for other people's tragedies. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a witness to my own rebirth. But I also knew that whoever sent those messages, whoever was still watching me, hadn't finished with me yet.
Morning had turned to a colorless afternoon. I wandered the streets until the clouds burned thin and the city lights came alive again. Every window seemed to hold a different version of me, a woman who still couldn't decide whether she was running from danger or running toward it. The USB drive pressed against my ribs with every breath, a heartbeat made of secrets. I ended up at the train station. The smell of metal, the hiss of brakes, the constant departure announcements, it all felt like possibility. I bought a ticket to nowhere in particular and waited on the platform. That's when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You can't hide, Clara. You already uploaded it. I froze. I hadn't uploaded anything. The drive was still in my pocket. Another message followed. Look at the news. I opened a random headline on my phone. There it was. Whistleblower leak exposes international money laundering ring. Attached images showed account ledgers, the exact files from my USB, and one name highlighted. Clara Miller. My knees weakened. Someone had used the leak to make me the story. The train screeched into the station, doors sliding open with a sigh. I almost stepped on, but the noise of cameras from the concourse pulled me back. Journalists, police, my photo flashing on their screens. Someone had planned this perfectly. Someone wanted me visible. I turned away from the platform and slipped through the maintenance exit, heart hammering. Outside, rain started again, thin as wire. I dialed the only number that might still matter, Grace's. It rang twice. Then a voice answered, not hers. Mrs. Miller, Grace Hart is in custody. She gave us your number. Who is this? Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need you to come in. You're not under arrest yet. The line went dead. Half an hour later, I sat in a great interview room. My reflection ghosted in the one-way glass. A young agent slid a folder across the table. We have been tracking Hart Industries for years. Your husband, Ethan Miller, was part of their shell operation. He wasn't murdered. He staged his death 2 nights ago. My breath caught. That's not possible. The agent flipped open the folder. A grainy security photo showed Ethan at an airport, passport in hand, alive. He left the country with a new identity. Grace Hart helped him disappear. The leak forced their partners to cut ties. You're the scapegoat, Mrs. Miller, but you could also be the witness who clears it all up. I felt cold all over. He used my name to vanish. Yes, the agent said quietly, but he underestimated you. The data he built on your signature, he left a trail only you can authenticate. You can end this. That night, after hours of statements and signatures, they let me walk out into the empty parking lot. The rain had stopped. The city glowed under a pale moon, washed clean but scarred. I sat in my car, engine idling, staring at my reflection in the windshield. Ethan was alive. Grace was alive. Everyone had been playing a different game, and somehow I was the final move. I reached into my coat and pulled out the real USB drive, the one no one else had touched, the one that still held the unedited truth. If I gave it to the FBI, the story would end. If I released it myself, the world would finally see what they'd done. Every name, every account. But I'd also lose the last piece of control I had.
I drove instead to the park. The bench gleamed wet under the streetlight. I sat down, placed the drive beside me, and watched the ripples on the pond smooth out. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting harder. It's about choosing what not to carry anymore. I whispered to the night, "You thought you could replace me, but I was the one who made you disappear." Then I tossed the drive into the water. It sank without a sound. I never saw Ethan again. Maybe he made it to another country, another life. Maybe he's still running from the ghost we created together. As for me, I kept the house, but not the name. I went back to the park often, not to wait, for once not to wait, but to breathe. Grace wrote from prison months later. Her letter was short. "We both did terrible things for love. Don't let that be the end of your story." I folded it into my journal between the pages of a blank chapter.
5 years have passed since the night I watched the water swallow the last piece of our secret. Sometimes I still dream of it, the way the USB slipped beneath the surface, a single bubble breaking where it sank. It's strange what the mind decides to keep. The headlines faded, the investigation turned toward other names, other scandals. Grace's trial came and went. She took a plea deal, then wrote me one last letter before her health failed. Ethan's death certificate was finally issued a year later. No body, only paperwork. The world accepted the lie he wanted it to believe. I didn't move away. I thought about it, but I couldn't. I rebuilt my life inside the same walls that once held our ghosts. A different paint color, new furniture, new laughter from friends who never asked too many questions. Some nights, I sit by the window with a glass of wine and let the city's hum fill the spaces where fear used to live. Healing isn't a straight line. It's circles, revisiting old memories until they lose their sting. I started teaching again, part-time at the community college. Literature. The students are young, endlessly curious, still convinced stories have neat endings. I let them believe that for now. One afternoon, a girl asked me why I looked at people the way I do, as if I can see the secret chapter in everyone. I smiled and told her the truth, because everyone has one. She laughed. "Even you?" "Especially me." The park is different now. The old bench has been replaced by one made of iron and cedar, a plaque fixed to its back, in memory of Grace Hart, for the women who choose to begin again. I didn't put it there, but I visit often. I think someone else, maybe one of her allies, or maybe someone who she once helped, wanted her story to end in sunlight instead of shadow. When I sit there, I feel her presence the way you feel a hand on your shoulder just before you turn. Warm, protective, unfinished. Sometimes I imagine Ethan watching from somewhere, still believing he outsmarted everyone. Maybe that's his punishment, to keep running from the truth I learned to live with. A few months ago, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph, grainy, sun-washed, on Market Square in Lisbon. And in the corner, blurred but unmistakable, a man buying flowers. Ethan. Older, thinner, alive. No note, no demand, just proof. I stared at the photo for a long time before sliding it into the back of my journal, next to Grace's letter. I didn't feel anger or fear, just closure, the quiet kind that doesn't need witnesses. I realized then that revenge had already happened, not through courts or headlines, but through survival, through waking up each day still willing to feel. People think stories end when the last page turns. They don't. They end when you stop needing to tell them. For years, mine was about betrayal, danger, loss. Now it's about something simpler, endurance. I still walk home past the cafe where everything began. The owner knows my order. The barista knows my smile. Ordinary. Safes. Some nights when the evening light hits the window just right, I see my reflection doubled in the glass. A woman who once drowned and learned how to breathe underwater.
Every survivor has a choice. Carry the path like a weapon or wear it like armor. If you were Clara, how would you carry yours? Share your ending, because every story deserves a reflection.